All right, everybody, let's get started. Welcome to the iHeart Public Health Advocacy 101. So this is really taking action for public health. This is really meant to be an introduction to advocacy. My name is Tracy Flood. I'm president and co-founder of the Broad Street Institute, and we're really excited to welcome you to this workshop today. A little bit of housekeeping. This is an interactive collaborative session. We have two versions of the tickets. We have this in-person version, and then we also have the follow along version. So we will be sending the recording to those who are following along. If you're watching this, hello, those who are following along. For those who are here in the session, you will need a computer, G Drive access, and audio and video so you can interact with your team in part 3. We don't recommend joining on mobile. The session is being recorded, as you can see. Okay, we do have some resources that are available in a G Drive. So this is why you do need G Drive access. So I'm just going to copy that link address and I'm going to share it in the Zoom chat. All right, I think that's right. And this slide deck, as they call it, is in the public domain. We release it to the public so that you yourself can also run civic education and advocacy training events. So feel free to use and reuse these slides. You've already probably noticed that the Zoom rooms are plentiful, and you started out in this main room where we receive those who are coming in from the waiting room with that survey. Thank you so much for filling it out. Here in the Great Hall is where we're going to gather and do this presentation. The main part of today will be in this Great Hall. And then when we try things out in the team rooms, then we'll be going to the top floor for that. We also have an additional room called the Be Right Back room. And if you're away from keyboard for any reason, if you just want to be clear that you've stepped away from your Zoom video and audio, then feel free to move to the BRB room and then rejoin whatever room you're previously in. Today's agenda is actually going to be split into 3 main parts. You've already completed that welcome and survey in the main room. And here we are in part 1, which is going to be the speed run of advocacy resources. This part 1 is really meant to be a fly through so that anyone who has to leave at the top of the hour, because we do know it is the middle of the day on Tuesday, can grab those resources and loop back with us later on in what we're calling the sprint, the 3-day sprint. Part 2 is when we do the step-by-step, how to write a letter to an elected official. And then we're going to allow people to try it out as part of a team. And that's where the team breakout rooms are going to come in handy. Whatever happens, we're going to take the final 5 minutes. We're going to close all of the rooms and we're going to return to the main room for those final 5. It'll be a chance for us to connect with one another, to share LinkedIn links, for instance, and do a little bit of a recap of how it went in the breakout rooms. There are breakaway points built into the session for those who are here in the in-person session. There's breakaway points at the top and the bottom of the hour. These are safe places to sneak away from Zoom if you don't intend to try it as a team. We do recommend that part to kind of get the ball rolling if you're new to this process, but those are the breakaway points. Let's actually start with a few disclosures. We want to lead with these because I think it's really important for a topic such as this. So Broad Street Institute is a registered 501c3 nonprofit, and we focus on training the next generation of leaders in data-guided decision-making and evidence-based solutions to improving community health. That is our main focus. Our funding is 100% from our community of learners, and this event was requested, planned by, and supported by the learner community. And you'll see support squad team members around you. So a huge thank you to them. This is meant for civic education. We want to lift up your voice. We are going to be giving examples and some text as templates, but truly we want you to be empowered to be able to advocate for the issues that matter to you. And just so you know, we are planning a grassroots lobbying campaign for health insurance access. And we do plan to spend less than 5% of our annual expenditures, which is well within the IRS allowable limits for nonprofits that are 501c3 designated. All right, This presentation is for educational purposes only. It should not be considered legal advice. Many of you are advocating as individuals. If you're advocating on behalf of an organization, you may need a more robust set of advice. What we ask here, we know that there's a lot going on, especially in DC, and we ask that you spread hope and share solutions. So here on Broad Street, we believe that the mind is a garden and your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. And despair is a weed, and it is really best not to spread it. So please spread hope and empowerment and messages that are focused on solutions. That is our ground rules for the session today. I want to thank all of the members of our steering committee or planning team that helped to guide this event, but truly there are actually more working behind the scenes, those who helped with our pilot, those who helped us to envision our objectives for today, and our support squad team members as well. So I just want to give an extra shout out to the event planning team. So thank you, Farheen, Teresa, Kainat, Shamini, and Nagar. A little bit about me, my little glamour shot. I live just outside of Milwaukee and I have 10 plus years of experience in community health data, particularly using data for improving community health. So, as president and co founder of the Broad Street Institute, I am really honored to be a part of this 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're hosting about 140 currently active interns who are learning and doing multi-month projects on data-guided decision-making and evidence-based solutions. We also host events like this. We're completely community-driven group, and funding and all ideas for our events come from this community that I've been so grateful to be a part of. And here at Broad Street, we believe that good data heals the world. So I've said a lot about data and community data. So why are we doing advocacy? Why us? Why you? And why now? I think that anyone who's interested in evidence-based solutions to public health, on the availability of publicly available data, which is being threatened to be removed from the internet, needs to know how to protect those valuable things and needs to know how to advocate. And so, in order to address a gap that maybe we know what evidence-based solutions are, but how do we articulate those and communicate those with others? In order to address that gap, we're hosting advocacy sessions and educating ourselves on how to advocate and how to be advocates for good data, for evidence-based solutions, and for things that improve the health of communities. All right, that's a little bit about me. And now I want to hear a little bit about you. You've done a wonderful job of sharing a little bit about your own experiences in the survey, but please, so everyone else can see, if you're able in the Zoom chat, please share your city where you're currently located, or where you identify as being located if you're on the move. Also your interests, your organizational affiliation, and as you're thinking about interests, feel free to share your interest in public health topics in particular. So please feel free to share those now. All right. Here's where I look at the results of the survey. All right, survey results. All right, thank you everyone for filling out the survey. We had 22 people filling out the survey. It looks like most people are right in the middle of somewhat confident about being able to write a letter to their elected officials, with a very few being very confident. Some are skewing towards fours. Feel free to continue putting your intros into the Zoom chat, and feel free to keep looking at other people's as well. All right, what is the difference between lobbying and non-lobbying education? Very few are very confident. It looks like it's skewing a little bit towards not confident. All right, what do people have most experience with? Contacting the elected officials to share your views. Fewer people have contacted those other than their elected officials, and fewer people have asked them to vote yes or no on a bill. That'll come up later. Oh, people have been marching. Wow, very interesting. Asked other people to contact their elected officials. That has a name. That has a name that we'll be talking about. All right, fewer people have done some of these. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. All right, what goals and objectives are the most interesting to you? Understand what is lobbying and what is non-lobbying education. We are fine lingering on that. And if you're hoping to build network connections, feel free to see who those who are interested in similar things as you in the Zoom chat. And how to write a letter. Okay, great. That's great. All right, so it looks like several of you are very familiar with Broad Street, which is awesome. Thanks everybody for filling that out. All right, let's loop back here. All right, let's do a speed run tour of advocacy resources. I admit I'm running a little bit behind. I was hoping to have a good breakaway points for anyone who had to leave at the top of the hour, but let's make sure that everyone knows what's going to be happening in the next few days. First of all, let's start with our big picture goal. Our goal is to provide civic education that can lead to advocacy for evidence-based solutions to improving health, with the hopes that that advocacy will reach our big goal of having evidence-based policies in the US that will help us to build a healthier nation. It is possible to build a healthy nation without evidence-based policies, but my goodness, why would you do that when there's so many years of research and amazing meta-analysis, systematic reviews? Evidence-based policies have the hope of really making a big difference, and we want to advocate for those. So thank you everyone for being here. This is our hope and our goal. Our main objective today and for this sprint is to send one letter to one elected official. And really, we're trying to have a real impact while also doing some real learning. So think of this impact project as a mini quest with some real world learning, turning information into action. Speaking of learning, we have a few learning objectives. So by the end of the workshop, everyone who is here and or listening in should be able to write a letter to an elected official that contains 5 key data points. You should also know how to contact your elected official with their contact information for 12 plus elected officials. Now, some of you are international. This will only apply to you in the US. And then, of course, we want to understand the difference between lobbying and non-lobbying education. This was the objective that everyone found most intriguing, so we'll spend a little bit of time on this. Plus, we want to connect and strengthen networks. It is very important for those who are interested in public health to do advocacy and to also strengthen our network connections, getting to know one another. We have a few things that we have in our toolkits and our inventory. We've got some time. So here we have about an hour remaining of a 90-minute workshop, and we have what's called a 3-day sprint. So if you do not finish in time for the end of the workshop, we'll be following up to see how things are going on Thursday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have a team that's a support squad who's amazing, who's here to support you. And we're going to be using only free resources. You do not need to shell out any more money to do what we are doing today. And we're going to be using some tools, including a step-by-step guide. We did rely a lot on the NACCHO Advocacy Toolkit, and also we have a Google Drive link as well. I'm going to just take a moment to share that stuff, and that'll essentially be what you'll need for this particular session. All right, if you are from a nonprofit, I also have some resources at the end of this presentation as well. All right, and then this is going to be key too. All right, Google Sheets. All right, there you go, everybody. Okay, I've talked about the 3-day sprint. If you have to go at any time during the session, please know the activity does not end when the session ends. The sprint starts essentially as you're prepping and preparing for the meeting today. And we're going to be sharing resources, which we've just done. We'll do a step-by-step walkthrough. We're going to try it as a team. And then Wednesday can be kind of a work day for those that need some overflow time. And then Thursday, we'll be looping back to see where we're at. After that, our team will be evaluating the progress and how we did. And this is what we're calling the 3-day sprint. It's really a 2-day sprint over the course of 3 days. And a sprint is part of agile project management. And it's anything where it's a manageable, meaningful, bite-sized activity with a clear timeline and deadline. And that one activity of reaching out to an elected official, writing a letter, is going to be our activity. Anyone who completes that activity by the time our team reviews it midday Thursday will get a micro certificate and awarded for being an advocate for public health. It's really 50 hours total if you included the prep time for this event. And let's dive in. All right, so step by step, how to write a letter. So contacting elected officials, this is where I do a little bit of a formative assessment. How many elected officials by number could you contact right now if you wanted to? So if I was like, hey, you really want to contact all of your elected officials, how many could you do right now, this very moment? Please feel free to answer that in the Zoom chat. I think it sounds like for those that have three, maybe there's not a barrier that you know who your elected officials are at the national level. Maybe it might be that some of you don't know how to write a letter. So let's dive in and feel free to keep answering if you haven't already. I think that to send one letter to at least one elected official, you do need a couple of things up your sleeve. The first one is contact information. You need to know how to contact that person. And the other thing is you need to know how to write a letter. So sometimes people don't send anything because they don't know what to write. And then even if they have the contact information, they don't send it. So very first thing is to make sure we have the contact information. That'll be one of our steps. And for those that answered three or less elected officials that you know how to contact, we really want to find out who your elected officials are. Who are they? It might surprise you to know you have more than 12. You have more than 12 elected officials at the local, state, and national level. Who are they? To write a letter, we're going to be sharing a template where you can add your 5 key data points. And this will answer the question of what do we say to our elected officials? Now, if you are lobbying or if you are thinking about lobbying, then you'll also want to know what bill you're lobbying for and whether or not you want the person to vote yes or no on that particular bill. And that'll be helpful to know when's the right time to lobby and how do you find that bill. All right, I think before we do any of this, we do need some advocacy basics. Some people wanting to know, am I an advocate? And most importantly, probably for you, if it's during the workday, am I allowed to advocate? So let's do this step by step. We'll go over some basics. We'll find names and contact information of our elected officials, all of our elected officials. We're going to edit a key template with 5 key data points. And then if lobbying, we're going to figure out how to find that bill number. So I'll start with advocacy, the basics. All right, so I'm going to tell a story. This is a true story. I'm going to tell a story, and I want you to think about at what point in the story the person who I'm going to be calling the scientist, so somebody who studies something, the person I'm going to be calling the scientist, at what point did the scientist become an advocate? So you can answer in the Zoom chat, or you can just follow along. So this is a true story. So a few years ago, just down the road from where I am today, about 17 miles outside of Milwaukee, there was a prairie. And that prairie had a few really important flowers in it, including milkweed, and happened to be along the path of the monarch butterfly, which is a vulnerable species. Now, the monarch butterfly has to get all the way from Wisconsin to its migration path. It goes all the way down to Mexico. And this prairie was an important part of the route. A scientist noticed that this was so, and also heard that there were plans for the city to build and approve a really big office like building complex. Not a park with grass, but all buildings. And it would essentially wipe out the prairie and the monarch's path. Now, the scientist found this out and had a whole bunch of Facebook friends who were also butterfly enthusiasts, and went to their Facebook friends, and it was part of a group, and said, "Oh no, this is happening! This is happening! They're going to be building a huge building complex and wiping out this prairie." And the people in the Facebook group were like, oh my gosh. And this is a national group, and they're liking it and commenting and talking and talking and talking. All right, so then the scientist just happened to be getting coffee one day at the local coffee shop, and started talking to a neighbor. And the neighbor was also really concerned about this huge building complex because they really liked nature and the open space. And they started to talk to each other. The neighbors started to talk to each other. And then a group of neighbors led by the scientist went to City Hall to talk to the one elected official who was in charge of approving this building parcel, this land getting parceled out for buildings. And they said, hey, this is a really important path. We want it to be part of the monarch butterfly's migration path. And is there any way to build these buildings in a way that doesn't disrupt that? And because there were neighbors there, the city official had no idea about the butterfly or the flowers. And then they ended up changing the plans. And so there are building complexes there, but they're built upwards and in a way that doesn't interfere with the prairie. And now there's a beautiful prairie park for the neighbors. And the most important thing is that a scientist, I think, um, change the building plans, right? So the building plans, if they had gone up, if the building had been built, it would have been there for decades and decades. So the scientists protected what was important to them and prevented something from going up that would be there for all time, essentially. Now, instead of a building, think of policies. Once a policy is written, once a policy is enacted and signed, it goes up for decades and decades. And it has the potential to either protect what we find important or to harm what we find important. So that'll be my next question here. What is an advocate? In the story, when did the scientist become an advocate? Feel free to put your response in the Zoom chat. And if you genuinely don't know, you can also put, don't know, a little question mark. Thanks, Liz, for getting going. Informing and organizing their neighbors, or their Facebook group, their national Facebook group, their national Facebook group. Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Building a coalition. Lauren called the group of neighbors a coalition. That's cool. Very interesting. All right. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Henry. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I'll wait for two more answers and then I'll move on. All right, any other different answers? Attention, yeah. Thanks, Maya. All right, very interesting. So, what is advocacy? There is no actual definition of advocacy. There's no definite definition of advocacy. Some types of advocacy have very specific definitions, and we're going to talk about them. But let's talk about it. Organizing. And this is from Tim Mooney's webinar, by the way. Thank you to Tim. All right, public education and training, nonpartisan voter education, different than partisan political activation. I made this in red because it might be something that has some legal restrictions around it, depending whether or not you're at work. Getting to know legislators, so talking to the city council member, talking to the person at City Hall, educating legislators, lobbying, and this one I'm going to put in blue because there might be some restrictions around that. Testifying before Congress or in a committee or congressional hearing, training others, influencing corporations is considered a form of advocacy, making sure that regulatory efforts are well written and enforced, and also litigation is considered advocacy to enforce things. All right, so a very, very broad definition of advocacy. In my mind, advocacy happens when you stop the building from being built, right? If you're thinking about policies, this is how I like to define it. So, is the action that I'm taking now going to stop a thing from being built or destroyed that I find incredibly valuable? So, in this case, it would be in one case, it was a building. In some cases, it's a policy. So, yes, maybe talking to your Facebook group, but if that's an echo chamber and it stays an echo chamber and there's no additional steps to actually influence the thing, then talking and talking and talking, and meanwhile the building is getting built can actually be very dangerous because you're talking and talking and talking, agreeing and agreeing and agreeing. And meanwhile, the buildings are getting built, the parcels are being sold, and the prairie is being wiped. So, unless that talking turns into something else in a timely fashion, then I would actually not count that as advocacy. And it can actually be a distraction from advocacy. You want to be sure that we're doing the main things, which is stopping the building from getting built, stopping the policies from getting written in a way that does not protect what we want. All right, so with that definition in mind, and keep in mind there's a very broad definition, can you share in the Zoom chat, when's the last time you contacted your elected officials? Has anyone done that recently? Now, I know there's some people here from international soils, so it's okay for you to tip your hat to everybody. All right, thanks. All right, so here's the next question then. Am I allowed to advocate? The answer is yes, probably. What am I talking about? Let's talk about your rights and your workplace roles. So, you do have a constitutionally protected right as a US citizen to reach out to your government. And your worksite also has the ability to set what is done on worksite property and or using worksite resources. So if you're currently at work, especially for a charity or a nonprofit organization, then likely you can do non-lobbying education. You may have to loop in your organization to make sure that you're clearly within their spending limits for lobbying, especially if you're doing on behalf of the organization. And electioneering is straight up forbidden. So no electioneering, which is, hey, vote yes or no for that particular candidate, talking to the general public. So not if you're at work currently representing a charity or a nonprofit. And then if you're at a government agency, then you may have limits on lobbying. And I would definitely look up your state definitions of what is considered non-lobbying education. So know your state rules around lobbying. Most of them are asking for that vote. Are you asking someone to vote yes or no on a piece of legislation, bill, a budget? All right, let's talk about lobbying and non-lobbying education. I've given some hints. All right, this is the topic that people really wanted to hear about. So let's do it. All right, is this lobbying or non-lobbying education? All right, so question number one. I go to the state capitol building and meet with my elected official and share with them information on evidence-based solutions to reducing diabetes in a community and what the local public health department is doing that's effective. So I'm sharing a one-pager with my elected official. Is that lobbying or non-lobbying education? Or non-lobbying education? Yes, that is correct. It is very, very solidly non-lobbying education. First of all, it is your elected official, and it is not talking about vote yes or no on a particular piece of legislation. All right. In some states, actually in most states, if you were to take that one pager to any elected official, even one who is not your own, it would also be considered non-lobbying education. There's about 6 states or so that are like, whoa, too many people are talking to me. And they have slightly stricter rules, but mostly informational stuff is non-lobbying education. All right. All right, what if you are saying, hey, we need additional funding for opioid prevention. I was wondering if you could co-sponsor a bill, and you're talking to your elected official. So I was wondering if you could co-sponsor a bill to increase funding for opioid programs. Is that lobbying or non-lobbying education? All right, that's right. That is lobbying. So even though the bill is not yet made, asking someone to co-sponsor it is essentially kind of asking for their first vote on the bill, right? So that is solidly lobbying. Bills and budgets. Okay. So now everyone's very, very good at this. So now I want to throw you a curveball here. So let's say you go on social media and you have a network of followers and connections, and you ask your network to encourage Congress to either vote for or against the next spending bill. Is that lobbying or non-lobbying education? Okay, so actually, that is solidly lobbying. That is considered what's called grassroots lobbying. So, grassroots lobbying is when you ask others to ask their elected official to vote yes or no on a bill. So, that is considered grassroots lobbying. It's usually when you give them the means and the motivation to take action. So simply doing a bit of education about what they could say, maybe is in more of a gray zone, but saying, hey, ask your elected official to vote no on that, yes on that, and you're sending it out into the world. That is grassroots lobbying. All right, that's really important. All right. All right, here's one that's like a little bit in between. Okay, so you're a nonprofit leader who knows that more funding is needed for the public health workforce. And so you go to your elected official and you say, hey, if the public health workforce had more funding, they could do some really, really cool things. They could do things that would eventually save the state a certain amount of money. Wouldn't that be awesome? Is that lobbying or non-lobbying education? Yes. Oh, a little bit of disagreement there. All right, depending on what is in that informational packet, depending on what is in that informational packet, as long as it doesn't reference a particular piece of legislation and how they should vote and is more of a balanced discussion on the information, it would be considered most likely non-lobbying education. Now, if you are working on behalf of an organization and you're trying to set your spending limits for lobbying and non-lobbying education, then there's a lot of great resources out there that I recommend seeing. As an individual person and a US citizen, there's a lot more flexibility. So if you're at a work site that limits lobbying, then you have to take a very well documented lunch break, go off site and off premises, use your own computer, and go for it. This is not legal advice, but it is possible. And it is important. So it is important, especially now for anyone who's interested in public health, to know what is allowable and what we can do. One of the reasons why there are limits on lobbying is because it is very, very powerful to ask people to vote a certain way. So let's talk about non-lobbying education. Sharing information with a lawmaker, lobbying, I think people got the gist, asking a lawmaker to vote yes or no on a bill or a budget item. So a bill or a budget. Anytime there's a vote. And actually, I think also if there's like a hearing and they have to vote yes or no on a person for a particular position, wherever there's a vote, basically. So that's lobbying. Civic education is sharing information with a voter. Once it becomes partisan or talks about how people, what candidates people should vote for, then it becomes electioneering. I'm mentioning electioneering now because if you are currently at a nonprofit organization or working for the government, electioneering is way off the table. So obviously feel free as a citizen to work on campaigns, but not as a nonprofit. You'll lose your nonprofit status if you electioneer. Lobbying is different. Lobbying is different. You can do it, and actually, in many ways, we should max out our lobbying budgets as nonprofits. All right. All right, guys, let's get started. Who are my elected officials? What should I say to them? And when should I reach out to lobby? Not lobby. Oh, when should I reach out? Then we got to write a letter. Let's do it. Who are my elected officials? I said there were 12. I don't think anyone knows all 12. I don't think I know all 12, but I know where to find all 12, and I'll tell you how. All right, who are elected officials in general? They're the people that you elect. They're on your ballot, your particular ballot. You're a constituent of theirs, and they need your vote. If you're in their district, they need your vote. So they have staffers and systems in place. I think they need to be in place legally to record the views of voters in their district, and they want to hear from you. So please do not let anyone tell you the myth that your politicians don't care. They care about getting reelected, and they want to hear from you and have systems in place to do it. More often than not, they will vote with their constituents. Very important. All right, so who are they exactly? Executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. The legislative branch has two additional branches off of it, the Senate and the House of Representatives, sometimes referred to as the upper chamber and lower chamber. Now, these are not just in DC, these are also at the local, which I'm not showing here, state and national level. So, who are the executive branch elected officials at the state level? Governor, lieutenant governor, local level, mayor, vice mayor, national level, president, vice president. The legislative branch, you've got the upper chamber, which is often referred to as the Senate. Each state sends 2 senators to DC. You also have state level senators sitting in your state capitol right now as we speak. You have a lower chamber. A lower chamber has different names, House of Representatives. At the state level, it might be called Assembly, General Assembly, different names. And I think it's Nebraska that only has one house, one chamber, but most states do this. All right, and then there's also like local city mayor, city council, and all these branches. There's also a judicial branch or the courts. Some of them are elected, some of them are not. It varies by region. So who are my elected officials? It really depends on your address. You've got to drop a pin because there's a lot of different squiggly lines for the different state level representatives and the US representatives. And so you got to drop a pin. It's really the only way to get to know all 12. And when there's tools for them. So the most obvious one is congress.gov. The most straightforward one is Cicero's elected officials. And then Common Cause has a lot of really good information in it, including who your elected officials are. All right, so let's try it. Congress.gov is super great, but it's only national. I actually want to know all 12 elected officials. I'm going to go with Cicero. Common Cause is also a great tool. They both have pictures and contact information. All right, we're going to try it. I'm going to copy this link address so everyone can see it. Oh my goodness gracious. Let me see, chat. And I'm going to exit out. All right. Oh, goodness gracious. Thought I was trapped in my slides for a second. All right, here we go. Cicero. All right, 1010 North Milwaukee Street, Milwaukee. This is clearly a real place. All right, so Cicero's elected officials. This screen will look different for you. It'll ask for your address. You can see locally, there's an executive branch member of the mayor, legislative branch, the alderperson, state level. These are not organized in any particular way, but you can see the state level senators, representatives, governors, and a whole bunch of other officials, and then national as well. You've got state level senators, there's 2, and there's 1 representative in DC from my district. Yeah, now that representative district is a very squiggly line, and that's why we need to drop a pin. All right, you can also see some appointed officials here. Cicero does include appointed officials. All right, that's it, boom. Now, Common Cause is a little bit of a different vibe. And you would type in your address here. And I think they do a really, really nice job of organizing it. I think they almost always start with the executive branch on top, and then they go into the legislative branch. This one doesn't have appointed positions. State, yeah, they do a really nice job of organizing it, and all of their information, their contact information is here. All right, as you go up the federal level, you're going to start getting into websites, contact pages, and not necessarily emails. But at the state level, there might be some emails as well. Okay, you'll have plenty of time to explore those tools. Now let's talk about what do we say to elected officials? What do we say? First of all, what is the best way to reach out to them? There's not just one way. We can send a mass stock email. A lot of websites provide stock emails that are like, here's exactly what you should say, and push send. All right, better is a personalized email, which is what we'll be doing today. And then even better than that is a phone call or even a visit. You can actually schedule a meeting with your elected officials. Some of them have office spaces not far from where you are. Very, very powerful. Phone call is also good. Anything that we're talking about today will apply to the personalized email and the phone call script. The phone call script is definitely something that's very similar to the email structure. All right, what do we say to them? So, first of all, please know you were talking to a staffer, not the elected official. So, if you've got a lot of pent up rage, then release it in yoga class. Because honestly, the staffer is just collecting a bunch of information on the voters in the district of this elected official. So, please be polite, brief, to the point, and include the 5 key data points. So, talk to a staffer and make sure that your information is recorded by them by being clear and concise and polite. Here are the 5 key data points: your name, your full address. They will use this information to look up whether or not you're a voter in their district. This is very important to them. The one topic. People want to compose this really big email that has all of the things that they're interested in. For the sake of the data, include one topic and what your ask is. If you're lobbying, you want to say vote yes or no on this bill and include the bill number. And then include 1 to 3 persuasive points: a statistic, a personal story. Your choice. It is optional. If you're in a hurry, you don't have to include this. It looks a little bit like this. Dear Representative or Senator, I'm a constituent in your district, very important to them, and a voter, very important to them. I'm writing about this one topic, so access to care and health insurance, to ask you to vote yes or no on the upcoming budget bill, or to continue to support this or that, or to please share your view back with me. So it depends on whether or not you're lobbying. You've got to decide that. This is how it affects me. I have a personal story of how not having health insurance can be very detrimental to a family. And thank you for your time. Sincerely, my name, I wouldn't put F actually, I'd put my full name and my address. Full address. All right. There are a lot of different tools for contacting your elected officials. These tools give you like messaging apps that you can just like shoot it off to the elected official. These give you the contact information so you can do it yourself. All good. All right. So now let's put some of this key information into a template. We've got to decide whether or not we're lobbying. So I'm going to come back to this. Here's the template here. All right, so here we have our advocacy tracker, which we'll be using later, and also this letter template. So here is what it looks like if you're not lobbying. So feel free to have an ask, learn about their views, and ask them if they have a formal position. If you're having an ask, then say how you want them to vote on a budget or not. And you can look for different things for the phrasing. So this is an example. Now, as Broad Streets and someone who's interested in evidence-based solutions to improving health, we are definitely for things that are for health insurance. And so you'll see some of the phrasing that we would use here. Okay. When do we reach out? If there's a bill coming up for a vote, yes or no? Bill or budget? Is there a bill coming up for a vote? If so, then contact now. Unless you are currently at work and your job prohibits lobbying. If so, contact after work. All right, if not, then contact anytime and do some non-lobbying education. Feel free to reach out to your elected official to say hi, to get them some information on what's important to you and build a relationship and find out what their views are. That's absolutely okay. All right, so when is it time to lobby and how we know if a bill is coming up for votes? This very pixelated GovTrack is an amazing website that shows you the different bills and resolutions. So let's use that. And you can see actually, I'm going to use this bill track from here actually. The last budget bill that was put forward by Congress, we believe is this one. And if you're looking to see who voted what, you can go down, you can see the full timeline of this bill and to see who voted. This is an ad. And then you can see who my elected officials are who voted. So if I go down to Wisconsin, I can see how Tammy Baldwin and also Ron Johnson voted. So I can actually tailor my letter to whether or not they should continue to vote the way I want them to vote or whether or not they should vote differently. That's very important. All right. This is the bill number if you're ever interested, and it does help to have that in hand, especially if it's one of many, many bills. All right, that link is there. All right, now it is time to try it. I am 7 minutes over my anticipated breakaway point. But it will be time now to try it as a team, to grease the wheels a little bit. We're hoping that those who have done this before can help those who are newer to it so we can build community and share what we know. And for that, we're going to be doing team rooms.